All right. Hi, everybody. Today is February the 1st, and we are on lesson 3 of our 10-week lessons, 10 weeks of the footsteps of Jesus. I hope that you guys had a good time. Last week we had bad weather, and so it was just me at the table, and everybody else joined us by Zoom. Today, Miss Pat's back with me at the table, so I don't feel like well, I wasn't by myself because I had folks on the screen, but still, it's kind of weird to talk to yourself. But although I can talk to myself quite quite well, um, I often do. But I'm glad y'all are here. I'm going to share my screen. Of course, it would help if I got out of my Word format and back to. Um, hang on, maybe I should stop sharing my screen until I get to PowerPoint. Let's see. I don't know where he went, but he just left again. Let's see. Brought some things in and then left again. Okay, PowerPoint. Oh, oh, my PowerPoint won't won't pop up. Okay, hang on. I know how to do this. Okay, PowerPoint. Now we'll go back to the Zoom meeting and we'll share. And now our PowerPoint's up. Okay. Yay. Oh, yes, while I was going through it. Well, I worked really hard on the PowerPoint and put it all together. And so that's right. You can follow along on the screen, but a lot of times, folks that are on the PowerPoint may not have the printout of, what we're talking about. And what I do is I type up, if you can see this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 pages front and back. And that's the lesson. And that's the lesson. And then I put it on the PowerPoint, and then I shorten it to one sheet of paper so that I can print off one sheet of paper for the handout. I know, but it's my process. So there was a time when I would only do the 2 pages, but I'm trying to type out more of my thoughts just in case someday I get to put it in a book format or something, maybe. I don't know what it'll do, but I'm glad if you're joining us on the recording. I'm glad you're joining us and that you stuck around for lesson number 3. I want to know if you learned anything this week. It was cold. Did you learn anything?
Yes, it's hard, and struggles make us stronger. And I tried putting my footprints in his footprints, and I decided that I give him too much to handle. I could handle some of it by yes, I could really handle some of it by myself. And it's not, no, it's too much. I give him too much because I keep saying, okay, Jesus, you said you were going to handle this, and you didn't. And he said, yeah, I thought I gave you sense enough to do it. You said, but I kept going back over and over on 8:28. All things work together good, and if it's predestined. But yes, I kept going through those verses, and I have Romans 8:28. Romans 8. My phone reads it to me every morning, and I love it. Well, I ought to be able to memorize it, but I can't. My mind.
It's an amazing chapter. It is. I love the chapter of Romans. Even though Paul, kind of writes in circles, or whatever, I really like it. How about you, LaDonna? Did you learn anything this week?
Probably, but right now at this moment, since you asked me, I can't think of it.
That's okay. I learned that it doesn't really matter what I want the lesson to be, that God's going to make me wait until I'm ready to listen to what he wants it to be. Because I can make plans and it may not happen like that. So I want to tell you that I think, and I'm sure there are lots of different kinds of people, but I think there are basically 4 kinds of people. There's the people who get a new tool or an appliance and they read all the instructions before, sometimes if they ever get it out of the box. Then you've got the person who gets a new tool or appliance and starts using it without reading any of the instruction, which probably got thrown away with the box.
Yes.
The third one is the one who skims the instructions just enough to know how to start using it and as they get it out of the box. And then the fourth one is the one who opens the box, reads the instructions step by step, follows each step in the order that it needs to be done to be able to use that tool or appliance. So, what type are you? Yeah. Are you an instruction reader?
Not totally. I look and see which tools I need,
Mm-hmm.
and
Fly by the seat of your pants. How about you, LaDonna? What kind of
Probably number 3.
you skim the instructions?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think Norma is? Do you think Norma is an instruction follower?
Yes, I do.
My dad, because my dad doesn't like to read, he will he will get us a new toy or whatever, and he will look at the picture and start putting it together. And when I was a kid, I remember he would holler at me and say, Valarie, come here. And I would come in there and he'd say, hey, here, read this for me. And he'd hand me the instructions. I'm like, where do you want me to start? He said, just start reading. And he'd stare at the thing. And he, okay, skip that part. Okay, now keep going. Yeah, a little bit further. Okay, I got it. Okay, now I got what I missed. he, he just knew how to do it. We actually, when we were at the children's home, we had bought the blueprints for a gazebo,
oh,
and we were going to let Dad. He wanted to build the gazebo, so we showed him the blueprints, and he looked at all those measurements and lines and numbers and everything, and he said, "You got a picture of this thing?" And so we showed him the picture,
he built it.
and he built it without using any of the blueprints. I don't think there were any two angles on that thing that was the same, but it
It's gorgeous.
it's beautiful. But I'm one of those people that kind of skims the instructions. See, as a recipient of many Pampered Chef tools, over the last many years, each time I'm like, ooh, here it is. I'm gonna get it out of the box. And sometimes I'll skim the instructions. Sometimes I will follow the first step, which is, like washing it. Sometimes I don't. I'm just so anxious to jump in there and use it. And I don't usually consult the instructions unless I hit a snag. Or unless I'm like, wait a minute, why is this not doing what I want it to do? And then I'll go look at the instructions. The same thing with the, piece of medical equipment that Nana's using right now. We brought it home and it was working, so I didn't read the instructions. And then when it starts beeping and alarms, then I'm like, where is that stupid instruction book? Because I want to pull it out and I want to look at it. And I have a purpose for this little instruction. If the Bible is our instruction manual, are we following the instructions? Sometimes here, I wrote this little paragraph. I'm gonna read it to you. It says, do you ooh and ah about the concept of following in Jesus' footsteps? Signing up for a chance to learn the instruction manual, but not really prioritizing the step-by-step instructions. I mean, we sort of already know how this thing works, right? I mean, we sort of already know how this following Jesus works. You go to church, you get your attendance sticker check, you read your Bible on your to-do list, and most of the time you can check that box. Yay! Yay me! And you watch what you say and where you go and you work on eliminating bad habits and creating good habits, and basically you clean up your act. And when you run into a snag or you can't get things to work right, we run to the instruction manual. Sometimes we pull up an app on our phone and like, I'm having problems with depression or anger or my filter, or aggravation or whatever. I mean, they have lists that you consider what Bible verse do I need to read for depression? And Google will give you a whole list. And we've been kind of using that as our step. What did we do before Google? I actually have a list that was cut out of a newspaper or a magazine, or, when you're sad, read this verse. When you need guidance, read this verse. When you need this, read this verse. And we kind of skip around the instruction manual. I mean, really. I mean, that's how I've done it. And sometimes that's how we do it. But what if we were to figure out how to follow the step-by-step instructions that are in the book? So, last week, part of your homework was to read the 3 verses that are similar: Matthew 16:24, Mark 8:34, and Luke 9:23, which all have the same instance in them. And so we're going to start with that. And I don't know if you did your homework or not, or if you read it in context or whatever, but I'm going to follow the simple who, what, where, when, who, where, when, why, who, what, where. Sorry, cold medicine. Who, where, when, what, why, and how. Okay, we're just going to follow that quick little method to put everything kind of in context. So if you have your Bible, I've got all 3 places marked in mine because I went back and forth and back and forth. But if somebody wants to have Matthew and somebody wants to have Mark and somebody wants to have Luke, we're going to read this set of verses. So in Matthew, chapter 16:24 says, "Then said Jesus unto his disciples, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." In Mark chapter 8, verse 34, "And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said to them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." And in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, "And he said to them all, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." So we're going to look at those 3 verses side by side. And part of your homework was to look at that. We always start with a who. Okay. Who is talking? Who wrote it down? Who's talking? Who's listening? So we know that Matthew wrote it down. Matthew was one of the disciples. And in Matthew chapter 16, it says Jesus was talking to his disciples. Now, anytime it says disciples, we don't know if that's the 12 apostles or any of the people who were following him as disciples, because we do know that Jesus had more disciples than just the 12. The 12 were apostles. We can talk about the difference between apostles and disciples. But in Matthew 16, it says Jesus to his disciples. In Mark, it says Jesus to the people and his disciples. So in Mark, the author of Mark was Mark, who was not one of the 12 disciples, but possibly one of the disciples of Jesus who followed Jesus. They think Mark was younger, and he may have been a young man. And he says that Jesus was talking to the people. So it could have been a broader audience. Luke, it's really unclear if he meant, because he says to them all. So we don't know if them all were all the people that were following him, or if it was just all the people who were disciples, but that's who Jesus is talking to in Luke. Now, first of all, why does it matter? Sometimes it doesn't. But we do know that Luke is the one who wrote the book of Luke, and Luke was not listed in any of the stories of Jesus in the Gospels. Luke doesn't talk about himself in any of the Gospels. He talks about the stuff that happened, and Luke is more like a reporter. He interviewed people because he has more details of what the people saw. Luke is the only one who records Zechariah in the temple with the angel and what the angel told Zechariah about John the Baptist. Luke's the only one who gives the, story about Mary and how she reacted to the angel's message and what she said and her interaction with Elizabeth. So those were like detail stuff that in my, just research and stuff, it means Luke, I can just imagine Luke going to Mary and saying, "Tell me, what did you think? What did he say? What did you say? You know, and what was that like?" And so he could get Luke has more detail. That's why Luke's one of my favorites because he has more detail. Um, but when we're talking about where, um, Jesus in verses before that in the same chapter, we know that Jesus was in Caesarea Philippi, which is northern Judea, and it's actually the according to Matthew and Mark, 6 days later was the transfiguration of Jesus. And that happened, we know, on Mount Hermon, which is in the northern border of Israel. Luke says that he was in Bethsaida just before that. So we don't know where he was when he said the take up your cross and follow me, but we know that just before that he was in Bethsaida, and that's where he fed 5,000 people. Um, and the Luke says that the transfiguration happened about 8 days later. So sometime within a week of the transfiguration, he was in northern Judea. And then when this happened, and this is going to mean something more later on in our lesson, but most scholars that I read agree that this event happened at the beginning of the 3rd year of Jesus's ministry. So we know that Jesus taught his disciples for 3 years. So this would have been the last year before Jesus was crucified. So the passage does not specifically identify the time of year, but the where tells us this happened a week or so before the transfiguration. So whenever scholars think that happened in the 3-year ministry of Jesus. So the next part, after we got the who and the where and the when, we do the what. And the what is where you define all the words. So if you've done Bible study with me, I like to look up words and see what the Greek word is or what the Hebrew word is and what it means. We look at different translations. I'm pretty sure that we know most of these words, what the words mean. But another thing you do with the what is to compare what's the same about all three and what's different. So the same in all three passages was whoever will follow me, deny yourself and follow me. Those are all the same things. Take up your cross and follow me. That's all the same in all three of them. The only thing that's different is in Luke, it says, take up your cross daily. So that's one of the differences. And then there's a couple of differences in the context, but we're not gonna, we can take all day looking at all the verses in context. But the next two questions in this method of looking at Bible verses is what gives us the step-by-step instructions. This will tell us what we're looking for. So the next two questions are why and how. And why, the why question basically is, why do I care? Like, why does this mean anything to me at all? And then the how is, how am I supposed to do whatever it is that's being asked of me to do? So that's the two steps of this that we're going to look at. The why do I care is because I'm one of those who wants to come after. I want to follow Jesus. I've been called and I'm supposed to follow in his footsteps. And God knew, according to Romans chapter 8, God knew that I was I would answer the call because he foreknew. And his destiny for me is to follow in Jesus's footsteps. He knew I would accept that, and he knew I would want to